Good afternoon, runners, and welcome to the TCS New York City Marathon Race Day Tips and Tricks with HSS. I'm Coach Steve, and guys, we're only a few days away from the 2021 TCS New York City Marathon, and I'm super excited for this chat specifically because we have a lot of questions, a lot of runners out there looking for those last few tips and tricks. And today we're joined, like I said, by our partners, HSS, Pam Geisel, to help us through getting runners through the last few days of training. Pam, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your background, what you do at HSS, and this is also your first year not running a long time, so kind of what that feels like.
Yeah, so I am the manager and an exercise physiologist of performance services at HSS. So I've done 10 marathons, 5 New Yorks, we just went over that. But this is my first year not running, so I'm excited to be a spectator. We have some spectator tips and tricks as well for anyone that may not be running. But I'm excited to be here and bringing it back to kind of what life felt like.
I love it. Yes, thank you for joining us. And runners, as you log on, any questions you have, please put those in the chats below. We definitely want to hear from you, what's in your mind, how your training is going, what you're feeling like the last 5 days. I think we're at 5 days out. So put those questions in the chat. We're going to take them one by one throughout the chat. But Pam, let's first talk about kind of these last few days leading up to the marathon. Yeah. So what are ways runners physiologically can, prepare right now for the race?
So I think the things that are still really left in our, grasp is nutrition, sleep, and hydration. Those three things.
We can't get faster.
We can't get faster. Okay. We got to put that behind us. And really, now's the time to really focus on the basics. So make sure that you're hydrating day in and day out. That we don't necessarily have the cues to hydrate as the temperatures decrease, but make sure you keep that water bottle with you, getting in, so maybe a little extra hydration. Nutrition, really making sure that you're eating a very kind of well-rounded diet. Don't necessarily cut back on anything besides maybe the alcohol and the sweets, things that aren't necessarily really contributing to our race day performance. And then sleep, which I think we're also going to dive into a little bit deeper. But if you really hit those foundational pieces, you're going to be ready to go on race day because the training's behind you. 14, 16, 18, 20, 6 months, whatever your training cycle was, we're here. We're in the finish line. Be proud of yourself. Be excited. But definitely still focus on the basics. We can still make some good choices.
Bring it back to the basics.
Yeah.
I like it. The hard work is over, guys. That sleep, nutrition this week is key leading up to the last few days of your marathon. So unfortunately, though, a lot of runners do find themselves with injuries right now. Maybe they went too hard on the last workout. They tripped going over a curb. Whatever the reason is, they're limping right now, maybe.
Yeah.
It's going to depend on the injuries, of course, but kind of how do we navigate the last 5 days with, a little, just a nagging injury?
So typically what I tell my runners is that there's nothing that you're going to do that's going to make yourself faster, but there are definitely things that you can do that can be detrimental. So if you are having an ache and pain, and shut it down. Don't go out and try to squeeze in some extra miles. That time on your feet is not going to add any benefit at this point, but it could definitely kind of detract away. So I'm sorry that you're having those aches and pains. Hopefully rest as much as you can, get off your feet, wear good footwear. So if you still have to go into the office, or even if you're walking around the house, be really mindful of like your ergonomics and positioning and things like that, and give yourself the best chance to get to the start line feeling good.
Yeah, getting that start line healthy is number 1 goal, even if it means missing runs.
Yes.
I always tell runners, even if you can cycle instead of run or elliptical, if you don't feel anything, no pain during elliptical, that's great right now. Get the heart rate up, shakes out the legs a little bit. So if any injury, definitely pull it back a little bit. It's not going to help your race right now.
And definitely be mindful, too, of kind of if you've been tapering for the past few weeks, sometimes you get these phantom pains.
The phantom pains is real. It is real. I had it in a half 2 weeks ago, and I felt it. It is real. Talk about what is that exactly for runners who make first race? What's a phantom pain different than a real pain? I guess would be the opposite of it.
Yeah, I mean, it can go both ways, though, because you have people that probably gravitate and try to say that everything is a phantom pain, but maybe it's real. So let's just highlight that fact that it is to be mindful if you have an acute incident that results. So if you trip off a curb and sprain your ankle, like that's not a phantom pain, that is real.
It really happens.
So so ice it, rest it. But yeah, during that tapering period, there's a lot of adjustment. Like, you just spent months of your life training for this event, and it's a lot of time on your feet, a lot of sacrifices. Now all of a sudden you have this free time, and the mind is funny. It like starts kind of creeping in, and it's confused because now you're not training for hours and hours and hours a week. So yeah, sometimes as a body's kind of regenerating and repairing, it feels a little different than you're used to. But don't fret, you're still ready to hit the start line. Just be really smart.
I love that. Phantom pains are a real pain, I promise you. But then when you get to the start line, you don't feel the pain, which is interesting. It kind of goes away once that horn goes off, the cannon goes off. I do want to bring it back to the nutrition. We talked about this earlier, and as runners get closer and closer and closer to race day, the night before, I think a lot of runners come to us coaches said, "What do I eat the night before the race?" And we always tell runners, "What'd you eat at your long run? What does that mean a long run?" So talk to us at your strategy and what you've done the last 5 marathons. What is your nutrition? Where do you get that? What is, maybe not exactly what it is, but what do you put in those, carbs and proteins and fats? What are you eating the night before to help you kind of fill up that gas tank?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is very personal because we all have very different digestive tracts. So the best piece of advice is exactly what you highlighted on. It's exactly what you've done the past 12, 14, 20 long runs. You've built a routine. You've probably had some nights where you did go out and get off your routine and your long run probably didn't feel that great. So hopefully along the training cycle, you've identified what works really well for you and then what doesn't. So stick to it. That's why, just as an aside, a training journal is super helpful for these circumstances. So hopefully if you have a journal, go back to it and see what it was that you ate the day before. And if you don't, make that note for next time because it's super helpful in a lot of facets that we'll highlight on today. But I definitely like to eat at home personally. I know it's really fun and popular to go out the night before the marathon, but I just know that it adds in a lot of factors that are now out of my control, particularly if the reservation is now taking 4 hours instead of an hour. Now just like everything kind of feels off. So I do like to eat my last meal at home. I know that's not a popular answer.
It's tricky for those runners. I agree with you completely because you control what the ingredients and everything like that, but it's tricky also when you are traveling. So people coming in from out of town here, or even in the tri-state area, you want to stay close to maybe the bus, so you get a hotel room at one of our partners' hotels. So how do you kind of, when you go out to eat, is there things you should look for in a menu item that okay, I know I like pasta, so this plain pasta is better than maybe the fancy pasta? Or how do you figure that out if you go out to a restaurant the night before?
Yeah, so this is not scientific in nature, but definitely more anecdotal. So when I do travel for marathons, I definitely stick to basic pasta and breads because that's what I eat at home and that's what I've trained with. I definitely avoid seafood. But with that said, I know people that do really well with a burger. They like dig it and it works for them. So I'm a little jealous actually. I would like to eat a burger before my marathon. So yeah, I think just if you are traveling, it's a great time to, again, maybe implement that strategy in your training cycle and kind of experiment that way as well.
That's great. I love it. And we touched on this earlier, but also sleep. So a lot of runners, we're sleeping a lot these days, but then closer and closer to race, especially the night before, we're up all night. We're going to the bathroom. We're nervous. We can't get back to sleep because we're worried about going to miss an alarm. Time change is happening. Is it going forwards or backwards? How do we adjust our? So talk about kind of the nights leading up to the race week, and then also how important that last sleep is. Is it important? Is it not important to runners?
Sleep is important in general. In your training cycle, it's definitely a lot of magic happens with a good sleep cycle, particularly when we're trying to recover from these significant bouts of training that we're going through. So that's why I'm really glad this is Tuesday, because we still have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So we still have 4 nights before the night. So this is a great opportunity to really make sure that you are sticking to your sleep habits. And maybe if you're someone that doesn't have great sleep habits, still try to sneak in, some good routines. So typically, if you are starting to feel anxious or nervous, some things that will really help you be able to fall asleep is being mindful of your exposure to like blue light and devices. So try to put down your cell phone, try to get off the computer a little bit earlier because blue light actually signals the brain in terms of its release of melatonin and whatnot. So it's a long cycle that I won't bore you with today.
That's next week's chat. That's another day.
I'll come back. But there's real science there. So be mindful, kind of take some time away. Make sure that your temperature in the bedroom is set appropriately. So a lot of I can speak for New York City. I can't speak for outside, but a lot of buildings are turning on their heat, and now all of a sudden it's 70 degrees in your bedroom. Not helpful for sleep at all. So try still use your AC, open your windows. Like try to implement strategies that you do have control over. Make sure it's dark. If you're traveling, be mindful of what day you're getting to the hotel and strategies that way. But I would definitely say shut down the devices a little bit earlier, darken the room, cooler temperatures. Those are all things that we can do. And the good news is the night before you're going to be okay. Like even if the sleep's not that great, it's okay.
It's okay if that last night,
it's
if I'm
okay.
up going to the bathroom and I'm worried about alarm, that's okay. It's not going to affect my race too much.
No, your excitement is
Good.
going to get you through it. So don't stress. But
You
in the
heard it here
meantime,
first.
don't come back and look for me. But it's okay. And be mindful, it is daylight savings time.
That's right.
So if, great thing, cell phones typically change themselves. Most people I know set 2 alarms anyway, probably because of the Seinfeld episode.
Yeah. Runners set 9 watches and their alarms. I do want to get over some shout outs here because we got shout outs and questions coming in from runners all over the country. We have Jassy saying, Team Rise to Run says hello. Jassy, it's great seeing your name again. Sydney from New York says hello. We also have coming in Jared from South Florida. Thank you, Jared, for watching today. We have Perry from Midtown Manhattan, probably right next door to us. Perry, hi. We'll go out to lunch today. Maria says, hi, Coach Steve. It's nice to see you, Maria. We also have coming in, we have the Faster 26.2 says, hi, everyone. Can't wait to join you all this Sunday, and we can't wait to see you as well. We have some great questions coming in from runners. Here is our first one. Let's see. Now, Jassy writes in, with 5 days left, what is the longest run we can do, and at what speed to stay mentally strong? This question we get a lot from runners. What's the most I can do? What's the minimum I can do? It really comes down, it's an individual answer because, someone who's been running 100 miles a week might be doing something different than someone who is doing 10 miles a week right now. The rule of thumb is, I think we mentioned earlier, you can do a lot more to hurt your run and your race than help it right now. You're not going to get faster right now. You're confident. You can help your confidence, I think, but you're not going to get faster. You can also just more chance of injury. So I would pull back on hard efforts. It's not going to help you out there. The only hard efforts I would do is strides. So go on a 3 mile. I don't know your past running, Jassy, but 3 mile easy, comfortable run. You're having a conversation with someone. And then after that run, you can do 4 to 5 strides. That's just, picking up your pace a little faster for about, 30 seconds. And then do 4 or 5 of those, call it a day. Once again, the more you do, the more you get in an area where more chance can happen out there. Distance, it's keep it under maybe 5 miles, 2 to 3 shakeout runs. Even if you did really nothing and 1 shakeout run on Friday, Saturday, you'll be good to go. Would you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. It's definitely very preference-based in terms of when you do your shakeout run, if it's Friday, if it's Saturday. Again, whatever's felt good to you in the past in terms of going into a long run and what's made you feel fresh. Some people are very antsy and definitely need that run on Saturday, which is totally fine. There's a lot of different rules. I think one is like a mile for every day out you are is kind of like one thing that people
1 day.
use.
So Saturday you do 1 mile.
Yeah. So as that can be a rule, again, it seems very anecdotal, but it's
Right.
out there. So, but again, rest. You've done the work. You've done the work,
over.
guys. Yeah. Now's your victory lap. That's the best thing about Marathon Sundays. It's truly
It's a celebration
a victory lap
for all the hard work you've done over the last few months. We got another question coming in here. Ken asks, if nothing we can do this week can benefit our time, why do all the training plans include runs this week? What is this is a really good question, Ken. So you are, like I said, it is a shakeout. We're keeping our legs active. If we just went home and sat on the couch watching TV, you'd become, just your antsiness, as we said before, that antsiness, you'd really want to get up and start moving around. But you do need to move. You need to move around. Now, that could also be walking. That could be cross-training. But we're runners. We're creatures of habit, so we want to run. And we feel confidence lowers if we're not running. So that's why a lot of training plans do have runs this week, because you're going to want to get out there and do something. It does keep your mind also engaged in what your goal is. So once again, we don't want you out now, and we don't want you to switch activities and do weightlifting all of a sudden. Stick with what you've been doing in the last 20 weeks, and a few shakeout runs is all we're kind of telling you to do. You've been doing that for 20 weeks. It's still a confidence booster, and so enjoy those last few runs out. How do those last few runs help you out in your training?
Yeah, and I have to say, just because we highlighted that it doesn't make you faster, we didn't say that they're not helpful. So what that kind of means is that it is important to kind of stay fresh. So if you're feeling really good going into this last week, absolutely you can hit those training runs. It's not a problem. Just be mindful of the length because you do want to stay fresh in that sense. But also, no runs doesn't necessarily mean that we're sitting on the sofa. So that, we should still remain active. You can still be doing some of your foam rolling, some of your stretching, anything recovery-based that feels good to you. That is also very personal, but sometimes people like boots or Epsom salt baths, so whatever that may be. So I'm not encouraging people to sit on the sofa. That can actually be unhelpful, but for our mental state, because we don't want to go in there feeling stale. So if you have an injury, I say don't run. It's not really helpful.
Yep.
But if you're feeling good, yeah, I think hitting some shakeout runs, strides are great because it's giving you that taste of speed. If you need, one training run that I do with some of my runners is like a 3-mile run where it's like almost like a baby tempo where it's 1 mile warm up, 1 mile at marathon pace. If you're just kind of looking to kind of find what that
Hit that
feels
mark
like
again. Yeah. What does that 9-minute feel like, or 20, or whatever it is? Yeah.
Exactly. So that is one strategy I've used too for people that are really like, wait, do I remember how to run?
Yeah. And those strides, I always like to do them even a little faster. It's only for 30 seconds, but a little bit faster than marathon pace. Like, marathon pace isn't that hard.
Yeah.
Marathon pace is not hard. It's just hard for 26.2.
Correct.
So feeling what those paces one last time is important.
Yeah.
We got another question coming in here. We have Aaron. Aaron, how you doing? Says, with a staggered start, what strategies do you have if you have to wait for several hours at the start line? It's a really good question. We both ran the marathon, Pam more than I, but I think we both have our own takes. A lot of runners, what I like to do, find a nice, cool, dry area. I like to be around people. I like to be near strangers and talk to them. So I like to find a place with a lot of runners. I put something dry on the ground. So whether that's an old heat sheet, a cardboard box, a towel, whatever it is, because the ground is usually wet from the night before. I like to talk to people. So I'll sit there and talk to runners from all over the country, all over the world, and see, how's your training? What's your goal? But I know a lot of people like to sit by themselves and meditate or read. What do you do before the marathon?
Yeah, so I'm the opposite
Okay,
of
there you go. See? Didn't even plan that.
I don't necessarily like to
She's
talk
not going to sit
to
next to me at all in the races.
It's really great that people like you exist. You make me happy. But so I'm the opposite. Marathon morning, I'm looking for a quiet, dry place as well. I pack a pretty serious Staten Island bag because I've never checked my bag. I'm definitely, I've always team poncho in the past that we discussed. But so I pack everything in there, all disposable, of course, but an old heat sheet is my foundational layer. I always bring an old blanket because you can never have too many layers. You can't find layers so easily.
That's true. Yeah.
On Staten Island. So I always pack an extra hat, gloves, sweatpants, sweatshirt. Like I am toasty as I can be. I do take a magazine always.
It's great because you also leave it there.
Yeah.
It's not a book that you have to take home with you.
No. Yeah, don't run with a book.
It's a novel on the road.
Leave that at home.
Harry Potter coming down the road.
Yes, exactly. So a newspaper, magazine, something to entertain myself. And it is a really great opportunity to really review your race plan. Like in your head, lay down, close your eyes. It's a journey and map it out in your head. Like, go bridge by bridge. Like I'm going to not go out too fast over the Verrazano Bridge. I'm not going to, get the excitement to sprint up the steepest incline in the marathon. I'm not going to get swept going down the hill because it's exciting. Brooklyn is ecstatic. I'm going to keep whatever my mantra is. So I always say this should feel
visualization.
Easy. This should feel easy. Like in Brooklyn, it should feel easy. And then I imagined getting, over the Pulaski through Queens, the marathon, walk the marathon course step by step and think about what your plan A is. So what you want to feel at each of those. Visualize less about time, more about feeling is my personal take. Think about what your plan B is because we should all have a plan B. It's good mentally in the race if that time comes. And then sometimes a plan C, which is usually have fun, which is easy to do in New York City. It's definitely the most fun marathon I've ran. It's such a great time to really close your eyes, think about what your race plan is.
And for those runners, we also will have religious services also in the Start Village. So if you would like to start a prayer, we'll have those as well at the Start Village that can help you maybe calm, meditate, whatever you need to do at the start line as well. We have another question coming in here from Carl. Carl says, I'm using turmeric and CBD to control inflammation. Any good anti-inflammation tips that don't include Tylenol? I'm going to toss one over to you. Any advice for Carl here?
Yeah, I definitely cannot give medicinal
Yeah.
advice, but it depends. Well, first is like, what is the inflammation from? So that's something I always ask myself. Is this a chronic issue? Is this an acute issue? Because the strategies are a little bit different for those two things. Besides that, I know ice is super controversial right now, but it's a good idea if you have an acute issue and you're trying to run 26.2 miles. I would say ice is your friend. If the question is more based in terms of feeling, which I would guess it is, highlighting things like topical, over-the-counter substances that can just
like
make
a cream
it
almost.
feel, can help make it feel better. I don't know where you're using it, but and I won't hint any brands, but there are brands that have actually NSAIDs in them that are over the counter at the pharmacy. So again, just general things, but kind of getting to the root of the inflammation is always super helpful.
Love it. Good question, Carl. We have Perry asking, what about a whirlpool soak the day before? Perry, I think it's a good question. I'm going to bring this back to also nothing new on race week. So did you do a whirlpool soak before your 20-mile long run and your 18-mile long run? If you did, it's great advice. Do it. Go. And it worked well. If you've never done that before the marathon, I would not advise doing it for the marathon. So, or for your long runs, don't do it for the marathon. Everything you did leading up to those long runs, it was your test. So Pam mentioned that journal earlier, which I think is great because everyone should have a training journal, whether it's online or a training plan that you write notes in. You're putting what you wore on those runs, what the weather was like, what you ate, how you sleep, but you're just documenting everything. Because then you know if it's 58 degree Fahrenheit on race day, and you start and you long when it's 11 o'clock in the morning, you know how to adjust for this upcoming Sunday. But it was raining today. You did it rain in the run. You can mark that down too. So if you had a lot of people massage the day before, we asked, oh, this try a deep tissue massage. It's the same thing. If you've had massages for those long runs, then go for it. But a lot of people, once again, don't have those massages for those long runs.
Yeah. And that's a great example to highlight. If you have not had a deep tissue massage leading up to your long runs, do not do it because it can not be helpful. But if it's been part of your training cycle, then absolutely go for it. Yeah, anything that's worked well for you, because there's a lot of personal physiological differences amongst us, including talking to people and whatnot. So just do what's worked for you, because you know you best, and that's why you put in the weeks and weeks of training is to get to here.
Nothing new in race week, guys. Let's see what's coming in next. We got our next question from Belisa. How do I know if I'm ready? Really good question. My longest run was the NYRR 18-miler, which was a few months ago, and I have not run more than that since. I'm a little stressed. Belisa, it is a common feeling for all runners. I think people who do the first marathon who have run 18 miles the longest, and also those experienced runners who do 21 miles the longest and do that 3 times. Like, it is a common feeling you're having. And you're probably also anxious and excited and stressed, and all those are really good feelings to have right now. That means you're doing something important coming up. Look at the runs that went really well. I'm assuming that 18-mile went really well. It was also that 18 miles a harder course, I believe, than the New York City Marathon course. I ran 13 miles of that course, so you ran more than me. But you had, I think, 3 Harlem Hills, 3 Cat Hills, 3 of the 3 Sister Hills, maybe 4. I'm not sure. You ran a lot of those. So that course was a lot harder than the course on race day you're going to run Sunday. So having a successful 18-mile tune-up is a really good indication that you're ready to go. You also have accumulation of weeks and months of training. So even those 5-mile runs you did on a Wednesday morning in the rain is going to help you, because accumulation miles will also mentally prepare you for hard parts of the course. So don't count yourself out. You're going to have a great day. Look at your goals. Make sure they're appropriate for your past training. Now, if your goal is maybe 4 hours, but you look at your training and you say, well, I missed the 20-miler that would have come 2 weeks later, maybe your goal is now 4:15, or you're going to run walk it. Whatever it is, you're going to adjust your goal to suit your past training. So you're going to A and B goal, maybe a C goal as well throughout the course.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you're ready. You're ready to toe the line because the race is Sunday. You made it. The best thing you can do is to adjust your goals, I think is the best thing to say. There's actually a lot of people that don't do anything longer than 18. And there's people that run 26. So, so don't count yourself out just because of the distance. I would ask yourself to think about what is it that limited additional long runs. Have you had an injury creeping in? Is it just stress? Because I think we have to be a little more graceful with ourselves. Our bodies only have so much ability to tolerate stress. And exercise is stress, but so is a new job, childcare. Like, there's only so much stress we can take. So if you eliminated the runs to accommodate other aspects of your life, like, well, good for you for recognizing that you were at your capacity. So I think give yourself grace. Recognize that you did the best that you could. The race is Sunday, and adjust your goals and have fun. At the end of the day,
have fun out there.
I broke my arm in 2019, like 4 weeks before the marathon. I still ran it. I was in a sling, but the smile I had on my face is different than actually any other marathon I've ran because I was just having so much fun. I had no expectations.
I love that.
So I just went out. I walked. I gave a lot of high fives. I think I drank a beer. Like,
I love that.
Yeah, celebrate.
Enjoy it. You're going to be great out there, Belisa. We have another question coming in here from Patrice. Asks, I missed the last 8 days of my training due to groin pain. You already said best to rest the last 5 days, but how determinal are the missed runs going to be? So talk about kind of missing last 4 runs, especially with an injury and what that feels like for runners.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the last 8 days is still part of the taper. Like, even if you have the shortest taper known to, marathon runners. So none of those runs are necessarily going to affect you physiologically. You may feel a little rusty, I would say it, but I would say that rust is probably more mental than physical. So I think reset your mindset. Don't think about it as missing the last 8 days of running. Think of it as taking a more
must need rest.
Taking needed rest, a very conservative taper, and that there's other people that don't run much the last 2 weeks of a training cycle anyway. So it's okay. Go in there feeling good. Adjust your goals again. We can't say it enough, actually, to account for the groin pain, and then get that pain checked out if it's still lingering. Because we want to make sure that you're not running into larger issues. Yeah,
and keep in mind, it's always better to be about, we like to say, road runners, 10 miles undertrained than 1 mile overtrained. So sometimes that resting this last 8 days will help you for the marathon because you're going to be a little more healthier at the start line, which is everyone's goal. We have another question coming in from Justin. Justin asks, let's talk about recovery on Medal Monday. What do you suggest for some light recovery work? Great question from Justin.
Well, Justin, I have the best answer for you. You come see me at the HSS Pavilion for Marathon Monday. So drop off the medal at the HSS Pavilion and then head on over to the HSS Pavilion. We have a team of exercise physiologists, physical therapists, our sports med doc. So we are there to help guide you through some stretching, foam rolling. There's Normatec boots. Just make sure you sign up online ahead of time. But yeah, there's a lot of recovery options available to you for free as your medal gets engraved. So it's a great use of time. Otherwise, I do like to move my body the day after a marathon just to kind of get my body moving. I like to go for a walk. I've rode a bike, and then definitely some gentle foam rolling. Nothing super intense though. Like, I do not suggest going for a deep tissue massage the Monday after a marathon. Like, allow your body some time. But definitely stretching, foam rolling, Normatec boots. They all feel good.
Love it. I love it. Let's jump back into this, and we'll get to more questions later, guys. So keep those questions coming. It's really cool to hear what's on your mind. We talked about this briefly before, and I want to come back to it. Nutrition the morning of, because we also talked about the night before, what you eat especially. Morning of, a lot of runners, the hard part about the New York City Marathon start time is we're running at 11, 12 o'clock or 10:45, whatever it is, later than our normal long run start time. So what do we eat the morning of? Is there a special superfood that we can eat to make us faster? And the second part of the question is, when do we eat this? How do we time this properly? Do we eat on the bus, in the start village, at home? How do we do this?
If there's a superfood that made us faster, I'd be very wealthy because I would sell it to everyone. Okay, so a strategy. My runners often laugh at me. So what I like to do is take a look at what's worked for you before your long runs. So this is just a hypothetical example. But let's say you like to leave for your long run at 6:30 a.m. And for the past 4 months, you would wake up at, let's say, 5 a.m. and then eat something at 5:30. So let's say it's an hour before your long run. Take a look at what that is, and let's go to race morning now. Let's say it's a bowl of cereal. This is, again, crazy example.
Yeah.
A bowl of cereal and blueberries. This is actually one of my runners' pre-race meal. I have them pack that and take it to the marathon start.
Okay.
Particularly if there's someone in a later start wave.
Like the 11, 12 o'clock, something
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Because the last thing I want you eating before the race is what you've always ate before your long runs. Now, with that said, if you usually leave for your long runs at 6:30 and you're starting at 11:30, there's more time there. So I do suggest other foods that have worked well for you before a run to eat before you leave the house. So let's say, you've been, after work, you grab an apple before you go, or a protein bar before you go for a run. Whatever has worked for you in those afternoon runs that you can digest well, have that before. Before you leave the house, and then have your normal breakfast is a strategy I like to use. Some people flip that.
Yep.
They eat their regular
big meal
breakfast
early
at
and
home, and then
snack later on at the bus or at Start Village. Yeah.
I call it their work week foods, like whatever you eat after work before you run.
Yeah. Just trust what you're doing. Know as you've read ahead for the timing, whatever works out best for you.
But what you cannot do is eat your breakfast at home and then not eat anything until
the
your
bus,
race starts.
The ferry,
yeah.
Sit in the corrals. And
it's a marathon before the marathon, so you have to fuel appropriately.
It's a long day. It's a really good question, good call. So guys, keep in mind what you're going to do leading up to marathon morning. You're not just getting to the start line and then you're done. You also have items to check in throughout the morning. So once again, your timing of getting to the bus, getting to the ferry, when you're eating your first breakfast, your second breakfast, all that kind of stuff is really important to have this, because you don't want to control what you can control. You can control when you can eat. You're going to control what you eat. So that's one thing you put in that what you control category.
Absolutely.
Let's jump into, we talked about this earlier, but I really want to bring it up again because we might have new viewers, about staying warm in the Start Village.
Yeah.
It's, once again, it's going to be 55 degrees, looks like it now, Fahrenheit, but early on it's colder. We're not warmed up, we're not running, we're not moving. So how do we advise everyone to stay warm out there at Start Village?
Layers.
So like an onion. It's like a big onion. There's a lot of layers.
The only rule is make sure that your bib number is on your bottom layer.
It's like what you want to finish in. Whatever shirt I'm finishing is what the bib goes on.
Yeah, because you don't want to have to try to transfer your bib mid-race. But yes, layers are your best friend. I always like to have too many layers because they get donated, right?
Yeah, Partners of Goodwill.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So they're going to a good cause. So there's no harm. I have a bag of running clothes that are clothes that I no longer wear, but I know that I'm going to need them race morning. So definitely think head, hands, neck, and then obviously top and bottom. But I feel like sometimes we forget about our extremities and the things that make us cold faster. So definitely hat, gloves, scarf. Even if you don't use them, it's okay.
It's good to have them.
You have
never
them,
know. Yeah.
and someone might need them.
Yeah, you might have someone that you talk to next to you
Yeah.
that is saying, hey, I need some gloves, and they need them.
Yes, and don't peel them off too soon, I think is the other thing to keep in mind.
You can toss stuff after the start line too,
Yeah.
which is important to know.
Because sometimes people get super excited and strip them all where they were waiting for the past 3 hours, and they get to their corral wait a second.
And the bridge can be windy sometimes,
Yeah.
so yeah, keep those on. Let's also talk about warm-ups. So we're in the corrals now. Let's say we're in the corrals, or we're just walking the corrals. What can we do to kind of warm up before the race? A lot of people, will go on a 2-mile jog before the long run or buckets. What do we do? What can we do in the Start Village of this race to warm up for our tour of New York City?
Yeah, so I like to believe that people warm up before their run, so I appreciate you shouting that out.
I advise that all the time. So whether it's a speed workout or a long run, I say warm is important.
Yes, warm is important. So with the marathon, it is a little bit different of a beast because I don't have my runners go out and run a mile, 2 miles, anything like that, like I would a 5K, because I think the New York City Marathon is unique in the sense that you have a steep climb coming out of the gate. So typically you're going to be in a pack of runners, which is fine, and you're just moving at a pace that it really is kind of the warm up in
First
terms
few
of
miles and stuff,
in terms of running, because you have a 26.2 mile race, and I don't unless you're an elite runner who's trying to
They're
win.
watching us today, probably.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Good luck. They are going to be warmed up. But for us casual runners, it's okay to kind of use that beginning of the race. But what you can do is make sure that you stay mobile. So if you have been laying in the fetal position, staying warm, don't go from here to fully, trying to do some triple extension activity. So definitely a little bit of walking around, leave a little extra time before your corral. I like to do some activations. So just like some basic exercises that you've probably hopefully been doing in your strength training routine. So like some side steps or some clocks, like general basic activation that my body is like, okay, I'm ready to do this. If you have historically had something very tight, doing some of those stretches and dynamic warm-ups can be helpful. But yeah, besides that, walking, staying mobile, being smart the first few miles.
That's great advice. Let's jump to some shout-outs. We have a lot of runners watching us from all over the country. We have Jonathan, New Jersey in the house. Jonathan, I'm from New Jersey, so thank you for joining us from across the water. We have Tracy from Ireland, our first non-United States runner. Thank you, Tracy, for watching today. We also have coming in Susan, Tampa Bay here. Hello from Team Ultra, Susan. Great to see you, Team Ultra. And then we have Scott. It is Scott's first marathon ever. And Scott, thank you so much. TCS New York City Marathon was my first marathon as well in 2010. We also have Florin says, see you all on Sunday. We are waiting. We've been waiting 2 years for this. And yes, we have, for sure. I'm very excited to be out there. And then some great questions coming from runners. Let's see what's on their minds. Bria asks, if you can't sleep the night before, what should you do? So I think this is really, we talked about you don't need to sleep, but what do you do in bed? Do you read a book? What do you advise runners to do who maybe just can't sleep? Panic in bed? What should we do?
Definitely don't lay in bed with your eyes open looking at the ceiling. It's not helpful, actually. So if you had tuned in earlier, we briefly talked about some things that can help, like setting the environment, getting off your phones. But if you're in bed and you're having trouble sleeping, typically we don't recommend that you stay in bed. So maybe get up and read a few pages of a book or whatnot. Sleep meditations are great. So I personally use a sleep meditation app. I often don't hear the end of them, so I think that's a good sign. And it's not so much that I'm necessarily doing what they're telling me to do, but it's stopping me from thinking about everything that I like to think about when I lay in bed. So in this case, it would be 26.2 miles. So just like trying to focus on not allowing your brain to kind of go haywire. So I'm a big fan of sleep meditations, actually.
Love it.
And then besides that, breathe and just know that it's okay if your sleep is a little funky. And you have a bonus hour because it's daylight savings time.
I love that.
So.
Keep that in mind. I'm assuming the thing don't do is don't look at the phone, don't turn the TV on, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Take the electronics away from you.
Correct. No electronics, for sure.
Good point. Good question, though. Coming in next, we have Julie says, I'll be running intervals. I'm guessing more run, walk, I'm assuming, for the intervals. Any advice on this, as I do not want to annoy the other runners? Really good question here. I like that. Yeah. So I'm assuming, once again, intervals, meaning you're going to run a few miles, walk a few miles, or minutes, whatever it may be. Stay to the side is what I say. Don't run down the middle of the road, but stay to the side and just kind of give some people put their hands out if they're going to walk or announce like I'm walking. So that's a good way to kind of announce that you are going to be walking. But it is very common in the race, especially walking through the water stations. A lot of people walk the water stations, which is, once again, it's common to do. You get a full sip, so a lot of people will use those water stations as their interval walk in a water station, then you run to the next one. So just announce that you're kind of walking into the sides is kind of what I would advise to runners.
Yeah, I think some general hand signs that runners recognize, just like a gentle hands up, is super helpful. If there's something in the road that can be, trouble or dangerous. Typically you like to throw your hand up, but I also have seen that like, hey, I'm going to stop for a second. I think it's like driving. Don't slam on your brakes. If you're in a pack of runners, because it definitely can disrupt the flow of traffic.
Make sure no one's behind you.
Yeah, so just make sure no one's flying you. Just a quick hand up and step to the side, and it's great. Like, everyone has their own game plan, so I think there's a lot of people that will walk, run. There's a lot of people that walk a lot of it. So don't think twice about it. Just, be mindful of your surroundings.
I love how courteous you're trying to be, Julia.
Yeah,
that's great. I love
it. Too.
I love it. Runners are so nice. What do we have next? We have Amy asks, I've heard people sleep on the ground at Staten Island. Is that really even possible? I have seen people fall asleep because they might be a wave 4 or 5 runner and they get there in the early bus, so they do spend time there. Hopefully they set their alarm on their phone to wake them up. So it does happen. Have you ever fallen asleep on the
I
skyline?
have fallen asleep.
Okay, you're one of them.
Yeah, because I don't talk to people, remember?
There it is.
That's the
Yin and yang here, yeah.
yeah, so as long, I told you I pack a big bag to go to Staten Island. So
Sleep bag.
yeah, with the blanket, the heat sheet. I typically have like an older sweatshirt or something, or because I've overpacked, I have an extra sweatshirt that I take off under my head as a pillow. And yeah, I don't need a lot to sleep. So a little meditation, a little blanket, I'm good.
So they do sleep at the start line. I love that. I found one of you guys. Sleep at the start line.
Yes.
Next, we have Erica asking, when should I eat breakfast for a 9:15 a.m. start? We did talk about this a little bit. Maybe rehearse or remind them kind of what that timing looks like for those runners.
Yeah, so GI and nutrition is even more personal than training in my mind. So think back to what time you would eat before your run going into your long run. So you have a 9:55 start. Let's say you typically ate an hour before, so you'd want to eat something around 8:55 to make sure that it feels familiar. Now, should you wait until 8:55 to eat? No. So using some of the lighter snacking that we had talked about, things that you know that your body is happy to eat and digest, is always the best thing to kind of have earlier in the day too. So absolutely nothing new. Same timing as you've always done.
I think it's important also for breakfast and snacks. It's portable. If you're bringing it with you, you might be walking to the porta potties while biting an apple. So also in the corrals, are you doing a gel in the corral because you've done that for a long run? So things that are portable that you can bring on a bus with you or the ferry. It's not a huge 5-course breakfast here we're bringing with us. Keep that in mind as well. All right. Our next question, we have Aaron asking, I always see people with ice wrapped around them after the marathon. My knee hurt after the NYRR 18 mile. You suggest trying that. Can you talk about the ice after hard efforts and maybe why we ice afterwards?
Yeah, so again, ice is getting unfortunately a bad rep right now in the media. But ice works. There's always a time and place. But if ice feels good for you, then absolutely. There's no harm. I mean, unfortunately, those people with ice wrapped around their knees probably took a visit to the medical tent, which I hope you are not in the medical tent at the end of your marathon. But if you are, the people are always so lovely and so supportive. But yeah, so when you get home, maybe try some ice on the knees. Definitely, I know a lot of people that like ice baths. The thing to remember with recovery modalities is that there isn't necessarily a ton of research that is super strong about it. But there's no harm in most of them. So what I say is if there's a potential benefit, even if we don't necessarily scientifically understand why, and you feel better, then go for it.
The placebo effect is real.
Yeah, I have no qualms about it. There's still things that we don't necessarily know. But I wouldn't necessarily aim to get the ice right after. I will just add, as an exercise physiologist, we have to get to the bottom of why your knees hurt. So after
because they shouldn't. I mean, it's not something that you finish raising every single person has ice on.
Right.
So figure out what's going on.
So your knees should not hurt after running. So after this, don't think about that now. Get through your 26.2, and then maybe seek out a little help in the off season to make sure that doesn't come up again, because we don't want achy knees.
No. Avoid that. What do we have next? We have Jared asking, I heard the second half is more challenging. How much more challenging is the second half than the first, particularly in terms of hills and inclines? It's a really good question, Jared. We will be doing a lot of course strategies throughout the expo time. So on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we'll be breaking down the course mile by mile, so you know exactly where those hills are. But the very short summary of it is you're right. The second half, I feel, is a lot harder than the first half. The first half being you have Verrazano Bridge, which we kind of talked about a little earlier. It is the biggest climb, but you also aren't going to notice it out there because it's mile 1. But as the biggest climb you're going to expect, the next 2 biggest hills aren't until after mile 13. So you have the Queensborough Bridge, which a lot of people think is the hardest bridge. It's not only a big climb, but it's also no one's there to cheer you on. There's no spectators. All you hear are the runners. It's also dark because you're on the lower level of the bridge. And so that's a really big climb. If you didn't pace yourself properly, you will find that challenging. But the one that most people don't talk about is the Fifth Avenue hill. As you come back in Manhattan for the second time, it kind of sneaks up on you. It's around mile 22. 110th Street to 90th Street as you come south through the city. And it's just a placement of it. If we went out and ran the last 10 miles right now, you probably wouldn't feel that hill. But once again, you're at mile 22, you're giving all you have with only a few Ks left, you notice it there. So those 3 hills, there are a few tiny, like Pulaski Bridge on Mile 13, doesn't have a huge incline to it, especially if you've done hills and trainings. But with those 3 hills, it does grow in you at the end, with meaning a lot harder of a course. That's why most runners on this course do have a positive split, meaning the second half is slower than the first. But if you pace yourself properly, you can use our NYRR pacers out there. They'll be running even efforts on the course out there, meaning they're going to slow down going up the hill and probably go a little faster down the hill. And overall, their pace will equal that finish time on their sign. So they can help you out there to pace properly throughout the course. What do we have next? We have Richard asking, can you talk about carbs? Specifically foods and how many days before?
Yeah, so I would definitely suggest tuning in on Friday when my colleague Jason is here, because he is a board certified dietitian and knows this in and out, because it is tricky, because I assume that you're hinting to carb loading. And the science of carb loading is actually much trickier than eating a lot of carbs the night before. So I do just want to highlight that. It is good to go in with your carb stores full, because we want to make sure that we have a full gas tank.
Yep.
But carb loading actually is much more complex. So I wouldn't necessarily, be focused on going over and above. But that is the teaser I'll give, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of carb questions on Friday.
Yes, Friday, join in for our carb talk and nutrition.
Yeah, yes, and general nutrition.
Yeah.
But definitely making sure that you, again, just have like well-rounded meals, that you're getting your carbs, fats, and proteins. Like that's really, because the general runner is not going in with any sort of depleted carbs because of just the things that we naturally eat when we're marathon training. But he will be able to answer all of your questions.
Good job. All right. Coming in next, we have Shiquip. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. My long runs were all mornings, and I didn't eat much breakfast before them. My start time is 12 o'clock. What do you suggest eating, or is it better to just eat energy bars? So we can't really look back at past training for this runner. But what do we advise for this runner?
That is tricky. Okay, so I would not suggest just energy bars.
You need something.
Yeah, we do need something. So again, this is not advice for most of you out there. But I think, going to some of the basics that people tend to do well with is bread with butter and apple. Think a banana. Some people do really well with like Pop-Tarts. You just want to think about like easy to digest. You can have something a little heavier earlier in the day, but in those hours leading up, if you've historically not ate a lot, you do not want to eat a lot. Yeah. So again, this is very going on a limb suggesting this, but those
for a specific runner.
For a specific runner out there, but those are some like plain white bread with butter.
Yeah.
Basic apple, like those tend to be liked by runners.
And don't upset the stomach too much.
But don't eat, if you've historically not ate a lot, then don't go crazy. Just make sure you have really good fueling for on the course.
Yeah. And we will have Gatorade throughout the course, and as well as Honey Stinger gels at mile 12 and 18. So if you had those, you can use those for nutrition along the course as well. But if you've never had them, once again, take your own and skip those stations.
And maybe try a bar like early, like when you wake up, so that way you have plenty of time to digest. But no, like nothing hard to digest, like going into it, because your body will be like, I don't know what's happening.
What is going on here? This is new. We have Fred asking a question. How do you stay warm after the finish when you only have a poncho and maybe a 2-mile walk to a hotel? The good thing about that poncho, Fred, is it is super warm. It is fleece lined. Most people do not have problems staying warm. So if you aren't checking a bag, maybe you also have a friend or family member that'll be cheering you on. You can meet them maybe at like Dunkin' Donuts, a train station, a street corner. You're gonna meet your friends at 65th and Broadway. Whatever it is, you can be on the northwest corner. So very specific, so they know where you are. because cell phones don't work at the finish line. Usually, a lot of people texting, so they don't go through. So make sure you know where you're meeting your family, and they can maybe give you something to stay nice and warm. Once again, that fleece line is super warm, and it is looking like, I think I read like 58 degrees Fahrenheit, so not super cold. We're not looking at 30s. You're probably going to be actually pretty warm at that finish line because it's going to get warmer throughout the day, of course, as well.
Yeah. So when you immediately finish, you're actually probably going to feel quite toasty. Historically, I've only ever ran in a tank top, and I've always been warm. But the problem is that your body temperature is going to drop. So even if you don't necessarily want it in the moment, grab that poncho. But then, you know, like you said, it is super warm. I actually keep mine in the trunk of the car just in case anything ever happens, because it's like
Never
a
know
great
when it's
emergency
yeah.
blanket. But yes, I've never typically had a problem. And the weather looks great, even like, you know, a little warm for some people, but overall great weather. So I think you're going to be great getting to the hotel. No problems. Don't worry about after the race.
Yeah.
You're good. You're golden.
We have a ton of questions, I'm told, so let's keep going with Victoria asks, any tips on items or additional clothing items to bring to the start, especially with a long wait if we're in a later wave? We did talk about this, so, you know, you overpack in a good way. I don't mean that negative. You overpack in a really good way. A lot of clothes to stay warm, because once again, you never know what you need. So bring more than you need. You're going to leave everything behind. You know, something to do, something towards that reading is that, you know, if you're going to use your phone, make sure you have an external charger with you so you don't drain your battery, because then you might be tracking yourself with it on the race. You're going to try to find people after the race. So if you need a battery, they can sell some small external batteries, are really good. The time does go fast, I've learned, because you arrive, you have to find, I'm in Orange, okay, which way is Orange? It might be a 10-minute walk to there, and then, okay, here's a spot I'm going to sit down, but now I also need to use the restroom. So I'm going to walk to the restroom, I'm going to wait in line, then I'm going back to my spot, and, you know, I'm going to get a cup of water from the water station. So you do, and then all of a sudden, go to your waves, you know, you crawl forward, go to your waves, you hear the announcer, and time does go fast at the start line. Some people fall asleep at the start line, set your alarm. And once again, some people also talk to other runners. So find something to do, whether that's by yourself or others. But stay warm, I think, is number one. Stay dry if the ground is a little wet from the morning before.
Yeah, so definitely, since we're not doing a lot of training runs, make a list now of what your packing list is going to be. People have always told me to pack toilet paper. I've packed it every year and never needed it. But now I feel like the year I don't pack it, I will need it. So if you're one of those people that worry about that, I mean, throw it in the bag.
Yeah,
why not?
You never know. Yeah. And this year, keep in mind, we still have enough restrooms for 50,000 people. Though we only have 35,000 people in this race, we did not lower the amount of restrooms at the start village and along the course. So those lines should be shorter, well stocked with toilet paper.
Yeah, besides that, I don't really have anything additional that I like to pack, but I would say get organized now. Do not wait until Saturday.
Yeah. Good question, though. Carl asked a question. This is my first marathon, and I'm worried about my toes and nails making it without some injury. I have half-size larger shoes ready, but any other good tips? You want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So don't worry about your nails. They're going to be okay. Definitely make sure you cut them.
Not too short.
Not too short, yes, because that is actually a nightmare. But definitely trim them like you normally would trim them leading into the race. Just make sure those are I assume those are the shoes that you've been running in, that you didn't now go out and buy half size larger. But so twofold, you're going to be great. Trim your nails like you normally would. Wear the shoes you normally would. If you've had nail damage, I know a lot of people think it's like a rite of passage to lose a toenail. Typically, that is a sign that something is probably a little awry in your toe box. Don't worry about that now, but kind of like the guy with the knee pain, let's improve that for your next training cycle. So maybe we'll investigate toe box shoe sizes and things like that. But in the meantime, just basically trim your nails, you're good to go.
Good to go. Yeah, and you know, once again, socks are really important to runners, but there should be socks that you've been using through your training. Hopefully not cotton, some moisture wicking socks to help keep the sweat away through your run. So avoid blisters and stuff like that out there as well. Next question from Jonathan says, how many gels during the race is too many? I consume 7 on my 20-mile run without problems. If you consume 7 on 20 miles without problems, I think you're good to go. You know,
I'm impressed, actually.
Every runner is different, so we have runners that never do gels because they do other substances, whether it's natural foods along the course or bars or anything like that. Some do just Gatorades throughout the course, while some do a lot. So I think whatever works for your stomach, this is one of the questions that it depends on the person. So
it definitely depends. You know, everyone has their own kind of metabolic efficiency and GI tolerance and things like that. So don't change anything that you've been doing. If you felt really good with that, then you'll probably be in good shape. And then, like I said, hopefully keep a training journal and then look at that kind of in future training cycles too and see if there's any adjustments that you can do in the future. But for now, you have a great ceiling of 7.
You just keep in mind how you're going to carry, because you need maybe 1 or 2 more. So are you going to carry them all with you throughout the course? Is someone going to give you them, you know, maybe more at mile 18? And then I always recommend for every runner, no matter how many you're taking, take a few more than you think you need. Once again, you might drop one. You might get to a point where you feel like a different flavor on the course, or you know you need more than you think just because of how the day is going. So take more than bring more than you need to. If you go through the honey stinger section, take 1 or 2 more extra than you think you need. It's always better to have those ones get more at the finish line, and you don't need them then at mile 20, and you wish you had one with you. Next up, we have a question from Sandra. Sandra asks, "Can you talk about meeting family members after crossing the finish line?" Sandra, it's a really good question and something. As of right now, I want runners to start making post-race finish plans. So this year, there is no family reunion area. So we're asking you guys to figure out where you're going to meet your family and friends, because we didn't train for this marathon by ourselves. They're going to be out there tracking you on the mobile app throughout the day, and finding them after the race with 35,000 other runners is key. That's the last thing you're going to remember of the day, so make sure it's a good one. So you know, you're going to cross the finish line. You're going to get that medal handed to you. You're going to get a new mask. You're going to get a recovery bag from HSS. You're going to start digesting that as soon as possible. But then you're going to be exiting onto Central Park West. Our finish line map does have a map of where the runner frozen zone is. And anywhere outside that blue area, you can meet your friends and family. I say, you know, a hotel lobby, a restaurant, a bar, a coffee shop, a subway entrance, whatever it is, or a street corner that works for you, wherever you're staying, whatever easiest for your family, your friends to get around is where it can be. I advise going farther west and north is the better, less people there. But you also get that. If you did check a bag, you also get that in the frozen zone as well. So it's really up to whatever is best for you. I like my family and friends to go somewhere inside, like a restaurant or bar, because they can kind of eat and drink and have a good time, stay warm, and then by the time I get there, my meal and drink are waiting for me with what I asked for beforehand. So that's my advice. It's worked well in the past. So plan that ahead of time, because once again, 35,000 runners out there with their friends and families trying to send a text message. As I always say, pretend like it's 1990 and how you made plans before was you just made those plans and you stuck to them and you didn't leave that bar until the friends got there. So do that on race day, because the text might not go through.
Be specific as possible. And that's true post-race, during race, like as specific as possible. I'm going to be on the northwest corner
for
of
cheering or
this
whatever
street.
it is.
And then, like you said, I love having them meet at a restaurant or bar. That way I know when I walk in, they're in a, you know, they're warm, they're happy,
they're in a good mood,
content. They usually have a, you know, a celebratory beverage waiting. So definitely picking a restaurant ahead of time is super helpful.
Love it. We got another question coming in here from Susan. Will water stations be on both sides of the road? Susan, yes, water station will be both sides of the road. It'll be between mile 3. This includes Gator as well. Between mile 3 and 25. So no water on the Verrazano Bridge and the last mile in Central Park. But this year we are taking out miles 5, 7, and 9. There'll be no water or Gatorade at those mile markers. So if you're at like mile 4, grab a drink, because you're not going to get it till mile 6. And same thing at mile 6, take one, because we're taking out 7. So 5, 7, and 9, no water, Gatorade. But both sides, of course, they're also very long water stations. So approach those water stations. I always advise going to the latter water stations or those volunteers. They're less crowded. It's less likely to hit someone or knock a cup over. And all the volunteers, they're about a block long tables, and I always look at the volunteer in the eye, grab that cup from them. There's trash cans along the road as well, but there'll be people out there also raking the cups out, so you don't have to worry about where you put that cup at the finish line when you cross the the aid stations. All right, our next question comes from Fabian. How do we sign up for those boots at HSS Pavilion for recovery on Monday?
I believe the New York Roadrunners have an Eventbrite. So yes, please sign up. Maybe they'll be able to put the link out.
I think we'll put in the chat in right now for those runners.
Great. So the link will be in the chat. But yeah, definitely sign up. You can relax in the boots while you get your medal engraved and say hi to me. I'll be there all day.
Can you kind of go into more what else is going to happen that day? So you get these great boots that are recovered. What else is going on that day for Marathon Monday?
So at the HSS tent, and then you can
Yeah.
highlight the New York Roadrunner tent. So yeah, like I said, there would be exercise physiologists and physical therapists there to help stretch you. It is hands off, but they can help guide you if you have a specific ache or pain. And we'll have kind of some stretching straps available, some foam rollers. If you I hope this doesn't occur to anyone, but if you are having any post-race aches and pains, we do have a sports med doc that will be there for consultations as well. And then we have the Normatec recovery boots, in which you can sign up for a stint there. But yeah, we're just here to celebrate you guys and hopefully, get you feeling good and back on your feet.
I love it, guys. And we also have engraving at Marathon Monday. So bring your medal in. We can engrave your name, your time at the same event. So you can once again get that medal engraved, walk around Central Park finish line. They're kind of taking stuff down. It's a really cool just vibe to be around. You ran that race, and then you could be there to be the finish line there. It's a really cool event. We're going to end this. We have a lot of questions. We finished up today. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. And if you have more questions about the course specifically, we'll be doing course strategies Thursday, Friday, and Saturday this week at 9 a.m., 12 p.m., and 6 p.m. So we look forward to all of your questions, and good luck to all of your runners out there. Thank you so much.